Welcome back to Sam Can Too. I'm currently sitting on the floor and I'm talking quietly because my baby is asleep. Do you want to see her? She's so cute right now. Anyway, she's adorable. So as the title of the video says, I want to talk to you about how I battled postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression or postpartum mood, whatever you want to call it. I think there's different names. And first of all, disclaimer, I am not fully processed in the trauma of everything that happened to me during my battle with postpartum. So part of my coping as not being fully done processing is to joke about it. And so I do not want to offend anyone with mental health issues, including postpartum or any other types of depression. And so laughing is a way for me to laugh about some of the things that were funny that happened, and it's a way to cope a little bit. And so it's not the only way I cope. I actually process and cry and grieve, so please don't be offended if my irreverent way of dealing with my own process is not the way that you deal with yours. But yeah, I might laugh or make light because some of it is just ridiculous. And the second thing is, please do not assume that, well, my situation is your situation. Seek your mental health provider, a psychiatrist. If you have a mental health emergency, you can call 911, you can get help, you can call a hospital and ask them if you need to come in. Anyway, so like I said in my last video, the birth was very difficult, but honestly, it was a lot easier than what happened after I had the baby. So let's see, I had the baby on the 23rd, which was a Monday, in about 48 hours after she was born, all of a sudden, which it was triggered by the fact that my birth was a little traumatic, as well as that Lucy was not breastfeeding. She was, but she wasn't able to transfer milk because she has a tiny mouth and I have a big nipple. That's just the reality of it. It's like the baby version of trying to do a keg stand, like first day out of the womb. So she was nursing, but she wasn't able to get the nipple far enough in her mouth to where she was actually transferring milk. So she was really not eating that much for the first couple days. So at home, all of a sudden, I had that traumatic birth, and every time I try to nurse her, she's literally screaming and crying, and like rejecting, shaking her head. And it was horrifying because she's starving, it's early in the morning, and all of a sudden I'm starting to feel the hormonal changes of postpartum. And if you're not familiar with what postpartum is, basically when you have a baby, your hormones shift in such a dramatic way that it's not just like you had a baby and now you're sad. I used to think that it was like, oh, you had a baby inside of you, now you don't, and that's really a bummer because you can't. No, it's like an actual shift in your entire physiology. I don't know if that's the right word, but and it's not an anxiety thing, but it can be triggered by anxiety. So like that, you know, having her not being able to eat and stuff really triggered mine or made it worse. And then I had a plan to not introduce any pacifiers, any bottles for at least a month so that I could help her learn with my nipple, with my breast, how to breastfeed. Well, it's 4 in the morning and your baby's starving. What do you do? And she won't sleep. She's screaming. So I pumped and I gave her a bottle, and that was the last time that she really breastfed. After that, she kind of stuck on the bottle, but that's beside the point. So I was flooded with feelings of fear, anxiety, adrenaline. It got to a point where not only, so that one night that was really bad. So this was, yeah, it was the second night that I'd had her, because the first night was fine. I was in the hospital, you know, I didn't feel any anxiety, but the second night it was like I was up all night, afraid. And it started to be where I was so afraid that I didn't even want to hold her. Looking at her would just make me cry. I felt like I was a bad mom. I felt like I was a bad person. I felt like I just felt insane. It was the strangest thing ever. And so the next night came, and as soon as the sun started setting, I mean, it was bad during the day. I was like just feeling overwhelmed. I didn't feel bonded to Lucy. Like I felt like, you know, I loved her and I would do anything for her, but it wasn't like I was like, oh yay, my baby. It was this terror feeling, and it was more of a physical anxiety that I've ever felt. And what I mean by physical anxiety is that I've had anxiety before where you have, you know, these thoughts, and my thoughts were racing a little bit, but more so I felt like someone had stabbed my back with adrenaline, and I would just be amped all the time, and especially when I'd lay down, because I was afraid that she was going to wake up and I couldn't feed her, and then I was feeling like I was not enough for her, and it just never stopped. And it got so bad to where every time I looked at Lucy, I would just start to be hysterical. I would just cry, and it was not, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm just having anxiety or no, and I soon was like, this feels like it has to be postpartum. This has to be what people are talking about. And so, yeah, it just got worse and worse and worse. I called my midwife, I had her come, she talked to my OBGYN, got a doctor to give me a prescription of Zoloft. So that's kind of like, okay, maybe I'm gonna feel better. I had people come and pray with me, because this is the thing, is when you are struggling, you are a whole person. You have your physical, you have your emotional, you have your mental, you have your spiritual, and it's not just one thing. And so my midwife was helping me address all of those things, praying with me through things, saying, hey, the birth was traumatic, so we need to deal with that piece. Okay, you know, what are you stressed about? You're stressed about these, let's do this. But also, let's get you on an antidepressant, because when your body is already dealing with these issues, then you're dealing with your emotions make it worse. So it's not just a one or done thing. And you know, people would tell me, well, you just need to calm down, you just need to realize she's okay, don't worry about it. And I'm like, it's not just me worrying, something is wrong with me. I am a very healthy, mentally healthy person. Does that mean I don't struggle? No. I'm a mentally healthy person because, not because I don't struggle. I actually do struggle. I've had anxiety. I get really, really dramatic about things, but I understand how to ask for help, and I understand sometimes what's going. I'm very, very painfully self-aware of where I'm at. And so I knew, I was like, this is not my normal thing. This is something that is so beyond my thought processes. I was using tools. I was using relaxation techniques. I was meditating. I was using music. I was using, I hate tea. I was drinking chamomile tea, essential oils, lavender, prayer. I had the church at my house praying with me, which actually helped a whole lot. I had the church coming in worshiping. And so that's throughout the week. So we're just talking about Monday through Saturday. Things are getting worse and worse and worse. My midwives came and I just started bawling, and they realized, oh my God, something's wrong. But the thing is so they got me on Zoloft. But Zoloft takes a while, sometimes up to a week or more, to start to take effect. So I start taking Zoloft, I don't feel anything, and Saturday morning comes. Saturday morning, I woke up and I thought, I remember telling Hayden, I said, I cannot fathom surviving the next hour of the day. Like, I cannot fathom having to continue living. I wasn't having suicidal thoughts yet, or at all. I never got to that place, but it did not seem far away. I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to hold Lucy. I didn't want to look at her, because it felt like she was a reminder of how I was just broken. And all I could see was a tiny person who needed me, who needed milk, who needed love. And I thought, she hates me. She doesn't like me. I can't feed her. She needs someone better. Maybe I should just run away. Maybe I should just get in the car and drive away. Mind you, I'm still healing from a 3rd-degree tear in my vagina, and I'm miserable. I can't jump up and help her. Everything I do is painful. And this little person is crying, and all she wants is her mom. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't have what she needs. And I'm looking at Hayden, and I remember wanting so bad to feel his affection, wanting so bad. I remember feeling like I wanted to crawl inside of him, like I wanted to open up his skin and crawl inside of him and have him hold me. But when he touched me, I felt nothing. I felt nothing. I knew that he loved me, and I knew that I needed him, and I was so terrified that I was too much for him, and that he was gonna leave me, and he was gonna, you know, and he would hold Lucy. And I remember looking at him and Lucy and being so jealous, like, how come he can feel things for her? How come he can take care of her? How come he can move? How come he can feed her and say sweet things to him, and all I can do, or to her, and all I can do is cry? And so I woke up Saturday morning, and I remember being naked, literally just naked, pumping, having my mother-in-law sitting on the couch, and Hayden, and I thought, Hayden, I have to call somebody. Something is going to happen. And so I call the Women's Center for a psychiatrist to see when the earliest appointment I could get in was, and if there was anyone after hours or if anyone could help me. And I described to them my symptoms, that I was hysterical, that I felt this. And based on what they assessed over the phone, she said, ma'am, you are having a mental emergency and you need to go to the ER right now. And I was like, what? She said, you need to be admitted. You need help immediately. You need to get out of your house. You need to dial 911, get into an ambulance, and be taken to a facility. And I just collapsed on my bed and started cry weeping, and I just gave the phone to Hayden because I knew what that meant. I work with, like, I know what that means. And what that means is that I need to be taken to a psychiatric facility, and if they so chose, if I wanted help, that they were gonna have the opportunity to assess me, and they could lock me up and I could not come home. If it's possible that they thought I was a harm to myself or harm to others, that they could keep me away from my baby. And I thought, I literally have nothing to give my child, and now I'm going to be locked away from Lucy. And I thought it was literally the most terrifying, horrible moment of my entire life as a human being, was that phone call, was knowing. And so I looked at Hayden, and part of me thought that he was going to say, no, you're not that bad, you don't need to go. But he was like, no, we need to get you into the hospital. And like, I'm not crying because I honestly, I am dissociating from that feeling because it's actually too intense for me to connect with right now. Like, that's something I need to do with Jesus and with a therapist over time, because in that moment I looked at Lucy and I thought, I'm leaving you. And if you're not a mom, you may not understand, but this person whose entire world was my body for 9 months, her entire world, her entire food source is my body. Her entire life has just come from my body, and all she wants, the place where she is most comforted, is in my arms, feeling my scent, hearing my heartbeat. I have to walk away from because I am messed up and I'm broken. I can't breastfeed her. I didn't naturally birth her. I couldn't, you know, hold her right up, you know, all these different ways that in my mind I decided I was a failure, and now I have to leave. And I didn't know if I'd be gone for days. I knew that it was possible I could come home that night, but I was so scared. And I remember giving her, I had a sweater like this one, oatmeal on my shirt, life. And I remember taking it off and giving it to my mother-in-law who was watching my baby, and I said, just, you know, wrap her in it so that she can smell me, And because I didn't want her to, I thought maybe she won't. I just want her to know that I love her. I wanted her to smell me and to be comforted, and I thought, I can't give her anything, so I gave her my sweater, and my mother-in-law was like, Sam, you're gonna come right back, you're gonna be back, it's okay. Like, and Hayden was like, Sam, it's gonna be okay, we're gonna be okay. And it was this, like, it was this moment of like, this is the worst day of my life. And it was the worst thing. Like, I've been through things. I've been through betrayal. I've been through loss. I've lost people. I've lost, you know, I've had my world turned upside down. I've had people stab me in the back. But to feel this out of control in your own perception, and just wishing that, in not knowing when, if you're ever gonna feel like a normal person again in the midst of what's supposed to be the happiest moment of your life, when you've never experienced someone who needs you more than a newborn. Not to mention my husband having to carry the weight of having a newborn and having to care for me. Like, I cannot explain how terrible I felt. So off to the psych ward at Ben Taub Hospital. me and Hayden went, and it was at about 10 in the morning that we arrived. We go in, we check in, we don't even know, like, what do I say? Like, hi, I need to check in. I'm crazy. I've lost my damn mind, you know? But basically I went and I said, I just had, and every time it was like, when you're upset and someone asks you, how are you? I would have to go into different check-ins, and they say, so what's going on? And I would just start bawling, and I was like, I had a baby. Okay, so I'm in a different spot because someone woke up, I needed to pump, and a lot of things happened. Okay, where were we in my terrible story about the worst day of my life? So I get to the ER, I check in at every session, you know, I'm like, I just had a baby six days ago, I'm freaking the heck out, and I'm just crying in the freaking, like, every session. They need to take my vitals, crying. And then they kind of warn me, they say, listen, we can take you back to the psychiatric ward. There's space today. Today's a good day to go because it's not full. I was like, great, okay. You have to understand that they have the right to keep you there for as long as they see fit. And if they decide that you're a harm to yourself, or if they decide that you need to stay, you can't leave. And I looked at Hayden and I was like, sure, I need help. And so I get in, and mind you, you know, I'm in the freaking lobby for probably an hour, and I'm shaking and I'm just crying, and then I'm pumping anywhere I can because I have to pump every 2 hours to try to get my supply up to take care of her. Thank God the birth center had given us some donor milk, so while I was in the hospital she could have something. And I notice behind one of the nurse stations that I see someone that I know working there, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding? But I can't remember where I know her from. And finally I'm like, okay, just Hayden, there's someone I know here. Like, I'm like, just help me not look over there. I don't want to look at her. Don't look. I just don't want to talk because I'm freaking losing my mind. And then lo and behold, they call me back to send me back in. Who's my intake nurse? Lovely Emily. God bless you, Emily. Look, it's nothing against you. You're wonderful. I was so mortified, and I was like, and she comes up and she just goes, hey Sam, and I was like, how do I know you? I know you from somewhere. And she was like, yeah, remember freshman year experience at Houston Baptist? And I remember that she was a freshman in my freshman year experience class at HBU many years ago. Oh, whoa, just headbutt my sharp pointy necklace. Momming, winning at momming. And not only is she coming to talk to me, she's taking me into intake, into the psych ward, the lockdown unit, and she just says, sorry you're here. And I'm like, F my life, this freaking, like, of all places to see someone, you know, it's weird enough when you see someone you don't know that well, but you remember from school, like at a coffee shop, and it's uncomfortable, let alone reminding you to not bring any sharp, pointy objects in a psych ward at the public hospital that you're desperately going to. Like, wonderful day for me. Wonderful day. And so she's taking me back, and she's like, yeah, sorry you're here. You know you can't bring any of your stuff in here. And so they check me in. They take all my clothes away. They put me in a psych ward gown. And then they tell me, not only am I there, but they said I couldn't bring my pump in there, my breast pump. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I might just be here for an hour or so. You know, the lady who checked me in was like, oh, we get postpartum patients in all the time. You'll probably just want to go back. You're going to see a psychiatrist and get the help that you need. No. So I go back there, I sit and I talk with the nurse. I basically tell her, look, I'm not sleeping, I'm having insomnia, I'm having severe anxiety. I call the thing, they said I needed to come here. I'm freaking out, like I'm shaking. They took my clothes away. Mind you, I'm still bleeding because I had a baby 6 days ago. So I had to convince them to let me keep my diaper on so that I'm not bleeding through my hospital gown and my slippers. And mind you, this isn't like, if you've never been in a psych unit at a hospital, and this isn't necessarily like Four Seasons, it's all open. It's not like when they said they had a bed for me, it was a gurney in a room with 5 other gurneys, with my name on a sticky pad on top of the bed where other people are sleeping. People are screaming. There's a naked woman in the hall who decides to take a shower in the middle of the day and then demand towels. And then there's me freaking the out, like having the worst day of my life. And so I don't know how the system works. They didn't say, hey, you're gonna come in here and this is gonna happen. They just kind of say, okay, the doctor will come get you and the doctor's there. Here's a tray of food. I'm like, food? Like, I don't need to eat. And she goes, you should try to eat something. And I was like, I don't. She goes, just sit in there and try to eat. So I sit in this room with tables and squishy styrofoam chairs. Mind you, they give you food that's very soft because you have to eat everything with a spoon because we weren't allowed to have forks or knives at all. And it was the most disgusting food I've ever seen in my life. I pretended to eat it because I had no appetite because my anxiety was so bad. I had no appetite for days. My mother-in-law and my husband literally had to force me to eat every single day, which is, honey, not like me. Like, I am very food driven. If I was a dog, I would be very obedient for all the treats. Yeah, so they try to get me to eat, and then I realized, wait a second, why are they trying to make me to eat? They're trying to make me eat because they're saying I'm going to be there a long time. So finally, after 2 or so hours of sitting there waiting, no one's talking to me, I mean, other than my lovely roommates, I go and I say, how long is it going to be until I see a doctor? The nurse, he kind of looks at me like, oh, you have no idea where you are, do you? Oh, you aren't aware. And he goes, we can promise you that you'll see a doctor within 24 hours. And I'm like, excuse me? 24 freaking hours? I was like, hi, I was totally like, I should have the mom, can I speak to your manager haircut? I was like, I'm sorry, I have a 6-day-old at home. I was not informed when I was told that I would be locked in here, that I would not be able to freaking see a doctor for 24 hours. It was a Saturday. Maybe it would have been better for me to wait for Monday to go into the regular psychiatrist if I can't even see somebody to sleep that night. They're saying, well, it could be sooner than 24 hours. I was like, and so I start hyperventilating and sobbing at the nurse's desk. And they're just kind of like, sorry. And I think, sir, I start to ask them, I said, you're not letting me bring my breast pump in here? They said, yeah, because you could strangle yourself. You know, it's a security risk because of all the cords. So could you just let me use it and watch me? And thank God Hayden was able to be in there with me, freaking holding my hand in the midst of it. Because it was so horrible. There was one cell phone that I could call, and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, don't, because she was going to come visit. I was like, don't visit me. It's so horrible. I didn't want anyone else there. I just had Hayden, and me and Hayden were just sitting there crying. And then I told him, I said, they're not letting me pump. Mind you, I had nothing to give my child. I couldn't be there. I couldn't hold her. I couldn't comfort her. I couldn't mother her. The only thing I had was that I could breast pump and then send milk home for her. And now they're telling me that. And I was thinking, if I'm here for a day, I could dry up. I could lose my entire milk supply before it's even started. My milk was just starting to come in. It was bonkers. So, but I'm a Hernandez. And Hernandez's, even in the midst of complete mental breakdown, do not give up. We do not surrender. And we don't take yet, no for an answer. So I was like, you know what? You have this feeling. I don't know if you guys have this feeling when you're in the midst of like mental whatever, where you're like, I could just break down and start crying right here, but I'm holding it together. I said, you know what? I'm not gonna hold it together because I'm upset and I know what I need. And so I just decided to stop pretending and I just let it all out. I'm just bawling, I'm pacing, and I'm telling them like, listen, I have not slept in days. I need to see a psychiatrist now. I need someone to come and give me a sleeping pill and give me some kind of anxiety medicine because I need to go to sleep. And so, after about 6 hours, which is actually fast, they finally let me see a psychiatrist who asked me 5 million questions. And I was like, even in my crazy state, I'm like, listen, I understand what's wrong with me, okay? It's hormonal. I have tons of tools. You're like, well, have you tried any relaxation? I said, oh, let's talk about every tool I've used. I was telling them all the different types of therapies. I was saying how I called my Splagna therapist who specialized in dissociation, how I had my prayer team on the phone, how I had all these different, I'm like, I utilized every tool in the book. I'm taking supplements. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. They're like, what about exercise? I was like, exercise? I have a 3rd-degree tear from my vagina to my butthole. What kind of yoga do you expect me to do to calm myself at home with a newborn? No. So finally after that, they said, okay, we're gonna send the psychiatrist, because I realized I wasn't talking to the main psychiatrist. I was talking to 2 students who would then go talk to a different psychiatrist who'd finally come down. So I realized that they said, okay, we're gonna try to get you out of here as soon as possible. I'd worked the system. I basically white chicksed it, and I might as well have said, dear Mr. Royal Hampton, I'm a white woman in your psychiatric ward. I need a sleeping pill, stat, or else I'm going to flip the hell out. You know, and there's this like temptation when you're there. My battery's about to die, so if I stop and then start again and I'm in a different place with a different outfit, you know, that's life, kids. The real psychiatrist comes and he says, well, this is what we think is happening. You obviously are showing signs of postpartum anxiety, depression, and he says, I want to give you a booster for your Zoloft. Keep taking your Zoloft. And then I also want to give you a sleeping aid. And so I was like, thank you, but I still had to wait another hour before he did that, mind you. And if he would not have come, I said, what do I do? I can't stay here for 24 hours. He said, well, you can sign a form that says your attorney, because I came in voluntary, that says I can turn away medical help and leave, but that's a 4-hour window that I would have to wait. And even then, the psychiatrist would then have to see me and decide if they want to allow me to be discharged, because then they can still decide, even if I voluntarily come, that they could keep me there. It was bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. And so finally I realized, he said, okay, and we're gonna discharge you. So me and Hayden were like, we have the green light to go, and we're just sitting in there. And mind you, like it's been 6 hours of me sitting. People are screaming. This one guy had his tray of food stolen, and he's yelling at me thinking I stole his food. And I was like, I didn't steal your food. And I'm just like crying, and it was such a hot mess. And then he gets a bagged lunch instead of his tray, and then he decides that he liked his bagged lunch better. So he was like, man, I apologize, this is better than the tray. I'm like, where am I? Mind you, none of the bathrooms have locks because we could have harmed ourselves. So I'm in the bathroom wondering if one of these guys are just gonna run in. And there's this temptation when you're in the psychiatric unit that says, you know, oh, well, these are the real crazy people and I'm normal. And you know what? That's not the truth. I was there. I was mentally unstable, and I was no better or no more sane than anyone there. And that is a humbling experience. And so, you know, Hayden actually had to leave me there for a little while to go get my manual pump, because they finally agreed to let me do that. And he came back and sat with me while I waited to be discharged. And it was, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to make fun of mental illness, but it was so just odd and not fun. And I remember me and Hayden were eating my dinner, and then I went to talk to the psychiatrist. My roommate stole my pie off my plate. The only thing that was decent was Sara Lee pie, and they're like acting like I'm looking at them, and then they look all paranoid because they know I stole my pie. And I'm like, dude, I don't care, eat my pie. I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Fine, you can have it. It's hard to eat pie with the spoon anyway, especially when it's frozen. Oh my god, oh my god. And so then there was this guy in there who only spoke English, and then there was a woman who only spoke Spanish, but they were still talking to each other at length while me and Hayden were in the waiting room. By the way, there was one TV that had no controls, that only played college football all day long, which is my literal hell. Camera died, child melted down, mommy had to figure it all out, but we're back. So from then on, I feel way more relieved. I'm still having symptoms of the crazy anxiety. The only way I don't know if I said this earlier, I just feel like adrenaline was coming out of my spine nonstop. And we're sitting there and we're like, what do we do? So we played like tic-tac-toe and probably not tasteful, but we played hangman on the back of my styrofoam dinner tray with the back of a spoon, while, mind you, the couple, or the man and woman who don't speak each other's languages, are talking and eventually kind of hooking up in the same room as us. And we're like, you know what, this is not my job to handle this. So me and Hayden just pretended to ignore while college football is on the television. Oh gosh, this was the craziest day of my life. So we're there, and in total, we ended up leaving right at about 6 o'clock and getting out. The psychiatrist comes and he goes, yeah, you know, I just think you're having a problem adjusting. But the psychiatrist comes and he gives me a subscription, or a prescription. He says continue taking the Zoloft, and then he added a booster, like an anxiety relief booster that I could take on top of that, and then a sleeping pill. So I was able to get what I needed, and finally they discharged me and they gave me my clothes back. And you guys, I have never felt so much relief in my life, because like I really didn't know, no promises about when or if I would ever be able to get out. And it was the craziest thing, because I was like, I texted my midwife, I was like, you know, there's nothing like 6 hours in a public hospital psychiatric unit to make you feel, you know, like you have perspective, gratefulness. And so I'm on my way out, and guess who I saw? I saw Emily, sweet Emily. And she goes, hey, you got out. And I was like, yep. She goes, that's awesome. Some people don't get out of there for a long time. And I was like, yep, bye. No, she was really sweet. She was just like the wrong person at the wrong time, and I feel so bad. So Emily, if you see this and I was rude to you, I'm so sorry. I was literally losing my mind. But the thing that was really scary was that, you know, I got the medication, I go home, and I feel the exact same, because medication for depression, antidepressants, different, as far as I understand, they take a long time sometimes to kick in. So even the boosters, the new stuff, weren't kicking in, and the sleep aid did not work. So not only was I dealing with my postpartum, but the postpartum anxiety was keeping me awake. And so I hadn't slept probably more than 45 minutes in about 3 days at that point. And then again, it was day 4 that I got home and I wasn't able to sleep. But one of the sweet things was that on the way home, I turn on, our church is on Saturday nights. By the way, shout out to Launch Houston. If you need a church to go to in Houston, it's my favorite place on the entire planet. Launch Houston Saturday nights, 2800 Antoine, Suite 2842 at 6 p.m. Yeah, but basically I turn on the live stream, and as soon as I turn it on, I hear them praying for me, as well as another friend who had some crazy stuff happening to her that same weekend. It was so terrible. Anyway, it was just a rough weekend. So we go home, I don't sleep again, and then the next day I wake up and still feel the anxiety, still feel like the world is falling apart, and I am trying to hold it together for my family, for Hayden. And then something really special happened, where I was still in shock from being in the psych ward yesterday, the day before, and a friend came to visit. I won't say her name, but a friend came to visit who's been through a lot in her life. And shout out to you, friend, if you know who you are. And she had actually gone through very similar mental illness things, some postpartum. And she actually was in the exact same psych unit at Ben Taub as I was. And she came over and she just told me, she just was saying that I was doing a great job. And she was like, it's going to get better. I promise you it's going to be okay. You are going to be okay. And we kind of just cried together. And it was one of the most healing experiences ever, because this is the thing, is people who are depressed or people who are really facing mental illness, they don't want you to fix them, because you can't fix them. And when you try to fix somebody who's dealing with mental illness, it feels like pressure. It feels like you're saying that they need to perform better. You're giving them advice, but really what you're telling them is that they need to do something to change the way that they're feeling so that you'll feel better. That's how it feels. They want the right words to say, or they want the right advice to give, or they want the right encouragement, but really it feels like pressure. It feels like all you're trying to do is fix me so that you'll feel better, and it feels like pressure. And it's like, I want to feel better just as bad as, I mean, more than anybody else. Like, so it's the darkest, most isolated place, but to have someone just see you and hold your hand and say like, you're gonna be okay, and I've been there. It was the most, and she actually knew it. It wasn't like she was just someone like, it's gonna be okay. Like, she really knew that it was gonna be okay. And it was awesome. And I remember feeling that afternoon for the first time, like the clouds had parted, and like maybe things were actually going to get better. So that was incredible. And actually the next day the medicine finally kicked in, and I was able to sleep. And I remember going, Hayden, I'm just gonna keep telling myself, I think the Zoloft's kicking in, I think the Zoloft's kicking in. And finally it did, and I started to, and I remember seeing Hayden. He came home from work on Monday, and I just wrapped my arms around him and I said, Hayden, it's me, it's your wife. Your wife is here, your wife is back. It's crazy. And you guys, I'm extremely lucky. Some people deal with that for months. Some people deal with it for so much longer. And some people deal with it their whole lives and don't have the resources or the knowledge of the resources to get the help they need. And even today, just today, which I'm 3 weeks postpartum today, but I went to go see my OBGYN. The doctor delivered the baby today for a follow-up. And I was talking to him about the postpartum, and he said that he's had 3 of his patients commit suicide because of the postpartum. And I was doing an Instagram live, and I almost said, you know, I would never do that, but I can't promise that, because it's not you. When you're under that intense feeling of depression, it's not, it's the strangest feeling of not being yourself at all, not being in control. And I think you are responsible for your actions. Like, you still have to, it's not an excuse to do whatever, but it's one of the darkest things, and it's definitely the hardest thing that I've ever walked through in my entire life. And I haven't had like the perfect life, you know. So anyway, but some final thoughts of how I got through. So number one, I reached out for help. I reached out not only to one person. I didn't just rely on my spouse. I reached out to my community, my church, therapists, you know, I called Lori, I called people, all the people from my church. I called people to come pray with me. I called friends to come sit with me. I texted people, and I told I mean, even though it was dramatic, I texted a group of moms just being like, guys, I feel like I can't do this. I don't think I can survive. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna, and it just, I had all these voices of encouragement around me. Then I went to medical professionals, and I got the medical help that I needed. And I wasn't ashamed to ask for help. I mean, I was ashamed to leave, and I'm dealing with that. But, and then I, like I always say, I treated all the parts of myself, you know, my physical, my mental, my emotional. And at the end of the day, like, I'm here, I'm alive, I feel like a person. I don't sleep that great because she wakes up a lot, but that's normal. It's not like, you know, feeling like I'm gonna die. Is that a chin hair? No, it looked like there was a chin hair on me because of this string. Anyway, you know, thanks for being on my channel. Please like this video, share it with your friends who are pregnant maybe, or have just had a baby. Just, we need to talk about postpartum. It is important. I'm sad I didn't get this out on World Mental Health Day, but you know, if your friends have a baby, check on them, and don't just say, hey, what do you need? Say, hey, how are you feeling? Do you feel like yourself? Do you need someone to sit with you? You know, offer things like, hey, can I bring you a meal, or can I do this? And just, if you have friends that have a baby, keep an eye out and just say, hey, are you feeling depressed? Do you need support? You know, do you need somebody to watch your baby while you go do a follow-up appointment? Because it's really scary, and I'm grateful that I have the support I need, but we just need to be on the lookout for other new moms who maybe don't know, especially single moms. Good Lord, like, going through this without family, or people who have family out of town. Yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a crazy story, but I'm really grateful to be through it. Again, I hope no one's offended by me making light of it, because it was pretty crazy. But I love you guys so much. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me, what are your stories about when you had your baby, or when you had a spouse that had a baby, or a friend. And yeah, I hope to see you guys next time.